Finally, 10 months after reassuming office in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has met with U.S. President Joe Biden on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. Hello to all Israel News readers and followers. I'm correspondent Tal Heinrich, based here in New York. And right now I'm standing outside the hotel where Prime Minister Netanyahu is staying during his visit to the United States. The Israeli premier has met at a different hotel with President Biden a bit earlier in the day. And in both locations, he was welcomed by hundreds of anti-Israeli government protesters. These are Israeli expats and some liberal American Jews who came to take a strong stance against his government's push for a judicial reform in an attempt to embarrass the Israeli premier on the world stage. But in the meeting, the judicial reform itself didn't take a very high place on the agenda. Two other issues were front and center. First and foremost, Iran. Netanyahu is meeting Biden in a week when the U.S. president just okayed and executed a very controversial prisoner swap deal with Iran that also included the transfer of $6 billion to Tehran from South Korea. And the other issue on the agenda was Saudi Arabia. Peace with Saudi Arabia is what everyone here is talking about. It's really conquering all the headlines in Israel and the United States because it could be a huge game changer for the entire Middle East region. And peace, as we're hearing, seems to be closer than ever. Here is what President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu had to say in their shared remarks in front of the cameras right before they entered their private meeting.
Thank you, Mr. President. Joe, we've been friends for, I've checked it, over 40 years. And our friendship goes a long way and can take us a long way. I'm delighted to see you. I think we live at a time of great promise, but also grave danger. You just spoke about that great promise in the G20 meeting that you participated and led. You spoke about an economic corridor that would link Asia, the Middle East, and Europe together. And such a corridor will make Israel a very important hub on a highway of unprecedented prosperity. But I think, and you think, that it can do something much bigger than that. I think that under your leadership, Mr. President, we can forge a historic peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And I think such a peace would go a long way, first, to advance the end of the Arab-Israeli conflict, achieve reconciliation between the Islamic world and the Jewish state, and advance a genuine peace between Israel and the Palestinians. This is something within our reach. I believe that working together we can make history and create a better future for the region and beyond. And also by working together we can confront those forces that threaten that future, none more so than Iran. I appreciate, Mr. President, your continuous commitment to prevent Iran from achieving nuclear weapons capability. I think that's critical. And that shared goal of ours can be best achieved by a credible military threat, crippling sanctions, and supporting the brave men and women of Iran who despise that regime and who are our real partners for a better future. So I look forward to working with you and your team to realize the promise and confront the threat. As I said, we live in, and you said, we live in uncertain times, rapidly changing times. So I want to reassert here before you, Mr. President, that one thing is certain and one thing will never change, and that is Israel's commitment to democracy. We will continue to uphold the values that both our proud democracies cherish. And I think that working together we'll realize the promise, roll back the dangers, and bring a better future for our region and the world. We can make history. Mr. President, with your leadership, we can make history.
President Biden showed up 40 minutes late to this meeting with Netanyahu. The meeting itself lasted about 1 hour, and the readout of the conversation between them, published by the White House after it, mentioned that President Biden invited Netanyahu to visit the White House before the end of the year to continue to discuss issues like Saudi Arabia and collaborate on that front. Now, just this week, the New York Times reported something very interesting, that the United States is examining the option of establishing a security pact with Saudi Arabia, something that resembles the defense pacts that it already has in place with South Korea and Japan. This is one of the demands that the Saudis have in exchange for peace with Israel. The other demand has to do with their nuclear capabilities. So Mohammed bin Salman wants to move ahead. So it seems President Biden certainly needs some diplomatic achievement as is continuing to plunge in the polls. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will also be very happy to have some deflection from the judicial reform tensions back home and add another achievement to his legacy. What's holding the deal back? Now, that's the question. Does it have to do with the Palestinians? We'll continue to follow and report in New York. Tal Heinrich for All Israel News.